the talk station is proud to present The War Files. The War Files, a selection of interviews honoring our warriors of the greatest generation, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Your name again?
William Rees.
And Mr. Rees, where are you from?
Jacksonville area.
What branch of service you served in?
U.S. Army.
When did you join?
41.
Where did you go for basic school?
San Diego, California.
What was it like when you went into the Army? Were you expecting a great deal?
I had served in the Civilian Conservation Corps, and I knew all the rules with the exception of arms. I was in transportation. I was a truck driver when I went in there, and when they signed me up, that's what they put on my record, truck driver.
Well, what was it like when you entered the Army? I mean, were you expecting were you expecting to go to war, for example?
No, there was no war, not then, in Europe, but we weren't that involved in it.
What was the feeling among your other recruits that were with you?
Well, they felt the same way. I mean, they expecting to be under their limit and discharged.
All right, now you were stationed briefly in San Diego in the Army, transportation. Where did you go from there?
Well, I had a choice of going to Hawaii or Alaska, and I took Hawaii.
I'd ask why, but I think I can figure that one out. All right, when you got to Hawaii, what was it like?
Like summer every day. I mean,
but I'm talking about in light of the fact that there had been some concern about going to war. Was there any feeling that there?
No, not at that time. No, we were on standby. Yeah, but we weren't. You might say, in war in the Pacific. War in Europe,
right? But
not in the Pacific.
You were in Hawaii, and where were you stationed?
Well, at that time, I was at Fort Weaver, the entrance to Pearl Harbor.
You were there with the attack on Pearl Harbor, is that right?
Yes.
How long had you been in Hawaii? About how long before the attack?
Let's see, I went over in October, November, about 2 months.
2 months, all right. Where were you the day that the attack took place? What were you doing that Sunday?
Well, we were off duty, weren't doing anything. It was along the shore down there, and a bunch of us had been out there bathing, if I remember right, because there's a beach cottage area along there, you know. And as far as I remember, we'd been out there. There was a huge boulder that was out there that we used to go and dive off of it. I had just left that boulder and come ashore, and this plane come over strafing the shoreline, and Straff got a bunch of them guys behind the boulder out there.
So they were actually strafing you, swimming down on the beach?
Strafing anything they could see movement.
What was it like when you first saw that? When you first saw that airplane?
I don't know. I didn't know what to think. Nobody did a thing. We weren't expecting anything like that. Realized that the enemy was there, and that was it.
What did you then do?
Other than going and reporting out to the headquarters out at the beach out there, I was assigned to staff headquarters right at that time.
What was it like that day, December 7th, now 70 years ago?
Well, it's hard to remember. We didn't have a lot of supplies. We had ammunition stacked along the shoreline, you know, and ammunition depots. And we moved that out to gun positions. I remember that. The outfit I was in was from New York up there, and there's about 10% of them had driving license.
Oh, wow.
Me, I had driving license. I was a truck driver, and they grabbed me right away and put me in transportation. It was quite a relief to be placed in transportation and taken off of a patrol area, you know, out there, patrolling the shorelines, things like that.
Following the attack on Pearl Harbor and the days following that, what was it like at Fort Weaver and there in Hawaii?
Well, everything was so restricted till it's hard to remember exactly how it was, because we come under battle conditions at that time. Everything was restricted. You couldn't. Everything was censored. You couldn't write a letter home. You couldn't receive one from home without it being read, you know, things like that. And it was just a different life altogether.
I want to go back to the attack on Pearl Harbor, and you mentioned in one of the articles written about you recently that you could actually see the pilots on the...
Yes. I actually see the pilot and a gunner sitting behind him.
Again, reflecting on that day, did it create anger or fear? What was the overall feeling?
It was anger, fear, excitement, and you name it. It was happening. Some it was a surprise too, some it weren't, and it was. We just took it as it come.
All right. So, how long did you stay in Pearl, in that area?
Well, I was in Pearl around the Hawaiian Islands, off and on over there for. Actually, in the islands. Now, I weren't in the islands all that time. I was in and out. Mm-hmm. I spent 4 Christmases over there in Hawaii. Hawaii itself.
What was it like for that first Christmas of 41?
There was nothing going on much because everything was restricted.
Did you have any kind of Christmas that year?
There's only a dinner. Did I remember a special dinner?
Wow. All right. I want to go back to those other experiences, those 4 Christmases. When you finally were able to write home, what did you tell your family?
I don't remember. The letters were censored. And in fact, I think I might have a copy of the letter at home now that I wrote Papa.
Yeah, because your family didn't know whether or not you were alive or not.
That's right, until they got that telegram.
And you said alive and well on that telegram.
Yeah.
Mr. Rees, let's look beyond that. In the 4 years you were there in theater, were you with a transportation pool the entire 4 years?
I was into everything: communications, transportation. Anything the Army had, I was involved in it because I was an old country boy raised up to do anything. Where that bunch of city guys from up north up there didn't know how to do nothing to go to chow hole. And I ain't lying to you, I've been out there with sergeants and showed them how to use a shovel to dig a foxhole.
Other than Pearl Harbor, where was your next duty station? Do you remember?
The Gilbert Islands.
What were you doing in the Gilbert Islands?
Well, I was on task force, occupying islands out there that the enemy held.
Were you involved in the actual invasions, or were you coming in after?
Actual invasions. We'll start off with Tarawa. That's where the 2nd Marine Division was wiped out. Mm-hmm. But also the 27th Army was in there. But they considered themselves smarter and better than any other branch of the service. And this commander that they had in there, he was going in there and take it. And he went in there, and the 27th Army Division, which I was in, and the 2nd Marine Division, and they wiped that 2nd Marine Division out. Them Japs were sitting and waiting for them. After they strafed and bombed and what they could of the place, they went on in there and took it, but they done killed most of the Japanese with bombs and strafing and everything. The Marine Corps, this guy that was in charge of that, he could take anything. He went in there and was going to take it, and he took it.
And lost a lot of lives in the process.
You better believe that. So there's over 1,000 lost on that beach.
How long were you there, Tarawa?
And the Gilbert Islands, let's see, I was there nearly a year down there in the Gilberts.
Back to the communications, and you said you spent 4 Christmases in theater, all 4 Christmases in Hawaii?
Yeah.
What was the response from your family at home? Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Well, I had a father and a stepmother and half brothers and sisters.
Were any of them serving in the military?
Oh, no, they were all too young.
Okay.
Oh, but my father and my stepmother. No, they were too young to be in service.
All right. What was it like getting those letters from home on those days?
Well, it was a morale booster, naturally, to get anything from back from the States, which everything was censored like everything that come in. But it was a relief to get anything.
How did you get back to Hawaii in each one of those Christmases?
I think it was about 10 months or something down there, and then come back, got transferred back to Hawaii.
And that second Christmas in Hawaii, how was that?
Everything was censored to where you weren't allowed to go out and participate in a Christmas celebration or anything like that, you know.
Oh, really?
No, everything was censored, civilians and military.
Where from there in the second year?
Well, I was on patrol duty here in yonder over there till I come back there to Barbara's Point, and the group to go back in the Philippines over there. And for some reason, they took me out. So they're sending me back to the States. I've been over there long enough. The rest of the outfit went back. I don't know. I heard from some of them after that. But they put me on the ship and sent me back to the States.
You're listening to a special interview with William Rees, a World War II Army veteran who was serving at Pearl Harbor December 7th, 1941. We now continue with today's War Files interview with William Rees, a World War II Army veteran who was serving at Pearl Harbor December 7th, 1941. I want to ask you before I want to go back to your return home, but before I do that, what was it like spending all 4 years in theater? Did it ever wear on you?
Well, it's something you got used to. You took it in stride. I mean, it was something you lived with in them days, because we had a war going on in Europe and in the Pacific. And you adjusted to that. You just didn't go out there and do what you wanted to anytime you wanted to. Like over there in Hawaii, everything was rationed over there. Gasoline was rationed. Cars weren't. There's plenty of automobiles over there. But you couldn't get gas to drive them. Mm-hmm. Well, in my outfit, I was in the 97th there. I was in charge of the motor pool. The company commander had a car. The first sergeant had a car. The second in command had a car. And all them was parked down at the motor pool. They'd drive the car down there and park it. Hey, Willie, something happened to my gauges on my car. Will you check them out and see what's wrong? Well, I knew exactly what was wrong. I dumped 5 gallons of gas in there. They'd come back. Hey, did you get a chance to check my car? Yes, sir. Thank you. Go up to that office up there and reach and that get me a pass anytime. But I didn't go out there and mess up, you know. I stayed straight. And I got along good with the staff by working with them.
In your process of being both in theater and out of theater, what was it like when you came back to Hawaii, for example, after having been in the Gilberts? I mean,
well, that was like coming back to, almost like coming back to the States when I got here. Everything was peaceful in Hawaii then, see. Mm-hmm. Everything had gone back to normal. Shucks, you go down to Waikiki Beach, somewhere like that, and you went to a cafe and eat, drink. They had these open bars and down Honolulu, a hotel street down there, and go down to an open bar or a cafe and have dinner and have a good time in there. Of course, the MPs kept it patrolled. I mean, you didn't go in there and start acting up, did you? Got something side the head.
All right. Other locations in the Pacific where you served? Any other locations of note?
The Gilbert Islands and Hawaii is the only places I served, other than on patrol duty, you know.
A lot of people don't realize that the Army was involved and in charge of, for example, the security of Pearl Harbor. Everybody thinks it's the Navy and the Marine Corps.
They're wrong, though. The Marine Corps weren't that big at that time to start with.
Right.
And the Navy had all they could do to take care of ships. Mm-hmm. And the Army had to take over.
Were you in Pearl Harbor at the time of Midway?
I believe I was in the Gilberts. I ain't sure.
Okay.
I'd had to look through some of my records, too.
Did you keep up with any of your fellow soldiers?
Yeah, what I could of them. We corresponded what we could, and some of them you'd write them, you didn't ever hear from them, and some of them you would. Run into, every now and then you'd run into one that you'd known. I met a lot of guys like that I had served with somewhere sometime.
All right, 4 years in theater, which a lot of people aren't aware of. You were there for the duration. How did you get sent home? Was it because of points or
Points.
And roughly when did you come home? Do you remember that
date? It would be hard for me to remember.
Mm-hmm. Did you come into California?
Come into California, come back cross country.
Were you still in the Army when you were coming across country?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so you were in uniform. What was it like when you were traveling across country? What was the reception?
Everybody, you out in the desert plains out through the Midwest out there in the West, you had these tribes of Indians out there that was hardly civilized, a lot of them in them days. And shucks, here they'd come running out to the train, and guys would hand them out something, and they'd hand you a dish of good food and things like that. Some of them, the guys would give them clothes to wear, and it was surprising. Them women out there that wore no clothes, something around their breast and middle. They lived like wild people out there back in them days. Well, they weren't actually.
Right. So then you trained from California. Do you remember where you landed in California? Did you go into San Diego or San Francisco?
I think it was San Francisco, I think.
All right. What was it like on the trip back from...
back from over there?
Yeah.
It was good because we come on back, there was a group of us come on a Matson Navigation Company ocean liner, the Matsonia.
So you were on a commercial vessel, not an army.
Better believe that was a ship. That thing was close as I did know the length of it, but I forgot.
Was it how packed was it when you were coming home?
It wasn't that packed because it was I'll say a few of us servicemen on it because it was a civilian ship. They put us on it and sent us back.
So you came to California. Then where did you end up in the States?
Well, after shipping back here, I come back here to the States, and I wound up at Camp Butner up here the other side of Fort Bragg.
And what was the war still going on at that time?
Oh yeah.
You came to Camp Butner. What did you end up doing?
Nothing. We done served so much time over there till they wouldn't. So they had a bunch of them over there and had us use us for instructors and one thing and another, And the group I was attached to got orders to go to the Pacific. Well, that suited me because I sort of wanted to go back. They come over and took me right out.
You say
discharging me.
They discharged?
Yeah. I said, well, I'd sort of like to stay in. Don't need you no more. They discharged me, sent me home.
So you came home to Jacksonville, Swansboro area?
Yeah.
Now, when you got home for the first time, when you got to Camp Butner, had you seen your family prior to that?
No. I come into me and Drummer Kellum, who used to run the fish market down here. Me and his son got together, Drummer Jr., and we come home together. And I went in there to the old man Drummer run that fish market down there, and we went in there that night.
And where's the fish market? Where was it?
Down there beside the railroad there where...
Was this in Swansboro?
No, right here in Jacksonville.
Oh, Jacksonville. Okay.
What was that street over there built at? Come across the old bridge, went back across there, used to go right on across. They built a store in there, a dime store in there where the street crossed. Well, you don't remember. Anyway.
All right.
Anyway, over there where the old, where the old depot used to be.
Okay.
That area in there.
You two got together from Camp Butner?
Yeah, and we come down there, and I was telling him, says I didn't know where my daddy lived at, and he wanted to know what his name was. I told him Claude Rees. He says, Claude Rees? Says he fishes down here on the river a lot, and says I'll buy fish from him. I'll take you right to the house. Good gracious, he carried me right out there to where Papa lived at. I didn't know, where he lived at. But old man Kellum knew him.
Was he surprised to see you?
Oh, sure, they weren't expecting me. Everybody was surprised to see me. Yes, sir.
All right. When you were coming across country, what was the reception when people saw you in your uniform?
Everybody out to that train trying to give somebody something. A drink, candy, cookies, cake, anything that they could give them that they would have. The civilians was out there offering it to them.
it's been 70 years since the attack on Pearl Harbor. Is this something that you think that we will long remember? You remember it, of course.
Well, no, we won't forget it. The government won't forget it. They won't make a mistake like that no more. We had, Roosevelt was president at that time, and he was a peace man. And we're not going to have no commander that's going to be like that no more. Of course, they learned a lesson.
Did you feel that possibly the folks in Pearl Harbor had been let down by the government by any chance?
Well, no more than anywhere else, I don't reckon.
Mr. Rees, it's interesting. We have the Korean monument, we have the Vietnam monument memorial, but not until 2000 did we start building a World War II memorial. Why do you think that is the case?
That's a good question. Most of the guys that was involved in Veterans Affairs and everything was in that war, and a lot of them wanted to forget about it. Where the Korean War come along, it was absolutely different. Mm-hmm. Looked like they made an issue out of it. Mm-hmm. And I guess that must have had something to do with it.
What about you? When you came home, did you talk much about your experiences in the war?
No, you didn't talk about it.
The fact that you grew up in the Depression, did that have anything to do with your approach to your experiences in World War II? The fact that...
Well, I got along much better than these guys that grew up around the city and everything. Mm-hmm. Because they'd lived on welfare, and I had to work for a living. I got along much better.
But I'm thinking when you came home, the fact that you'd been through the Depression, been through the war, yet a lot of people never really talked about it. You didn't talk about it as likewise?
At that time, you had Army troops out here on the base, as well as Marines. Mm-hmm. And down at Hubert area down there, there's a bunch of them down at the outpost out there. There's a camp down there that had a bunch of Army guys into it. I used to be over there with them a lot. And then even after I got out of service, I used to go over there and visit with them. And that's where I had my first run-in with the Marine Corps, I reckon. Go over there and me own property on the base, a veteran with clearance to go out there. And then some Marine come up there and tell me, says, "This is military, you can't go out here, you're a civilian." I give one of them a good cussing out there and drove on, and they come in there and picked me up, and the guy talked to me a little, and he told them guys, says, "Leave him alone." I went on after that, they gave me a pass, and I went and come where I wanted to out there.
I want to go back to the memorial. Do you think that the country was slow in recognizing the value and the sacrifice of World War II veterans, or is it a matter of just World War II veterans just never thought of it as a sacrifice?
There's a lot of them didn't think it as a sacrifice. I can see having a memorial and everything, but I don't see making an issue out of it.
Well, now that we've seen 70 years since the bombing of Pearl Harbor, did you come to sort of peace with that event in your life?
That's a hard question to answer. I feel more at peace with the Pacific Theater, the Japanese, Orientals over there, than I do with Europe.
Well, Mr. Rees, I really appreciate your time this afternoon.
You've been listening to The War Files, a selection of interviews honoring our warriors of the greatest generation, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. The War Files is a TalkStation presentation.